So my name is William. I'm here at GitLab, and I'm in product marketing, but I'm talking with Brian, who works on our handbook, and we're talking about the handbook and just some of the things that our handbook is missing and some of the problems our handbook solves. We thought maybe this will be interesting to somebody else, so we're recording. So this is kind of like a summary of our conversation, where the things that I think GitLab handbook gives us today that I don't think you can get out of a CMS.
At least not without modification.
Yeah, I don't know that. Maybe that's even like an open question. Like,
that's a good point.
Can you get this?
Well, we do know with some of the enterprise CMSs, and I'm not sure about this, but I think with some plugins for WordPress or MediaWiki, things like that, there are some of these features that can be added on.
Because I think that like this one here, which would be like this. So you might be able to get a proposal view in the CMS with a plugin. I don't think you can get a review. I don't think that there's any like discussion mechanism whereby you can like leave comments on parts of content in order to like have an asynchronous discussion around
directly within the content management system, as opposed to switching over to another medium.
Right, as opposed to like, okay, I have this Google Doc where I'm doing my review, and then I put that, and then I put it in the wiki when I'm done, or I put that on WordPress when I'm done. But like within the tool, because this is we have this today with our tool, which is like I can propose a change, I can asynchronously get review on that content, and then there's an approval mechanism. And in some cases, that's just like somebody has the ability to merge, or in other cases, it's literally like somebody can approve and somebody else can merge. Mm-hmm. But this kind of flow, and then the other element is this PRA flow, propose, review, approve. It needs to be multiplexed so that you can have multiple proposals going on at the same time to the same page. Like I even think of like our values page, I think has like probably several MRs open, or there's probably several pages of the handbook that have like, for that matter, you could even have like the same page and the same section, and two people have different ideas and they each make a proposal, mm-hmm. and you can discuss them separately. Like we get all of that today out of the box with our system. I don't think that exists in any other system. And then the other one is like then a reference to that discussion, which occurred to me like as we were linking each other MRs. Like, mm-hmm. Oh, do you have the MR for that? Oh yeah, here you go. Here's where that change was proposed, and here's the discussion on it.
Right.
But then I think there's all this stuff that we don't get. So like short time to deploy. Like a wiki you can edit and it's live almost immediately. Here, if I want to make a policy change and I need those instructions to be disseminated to somebody in a timely fashion, sometimes I need it live like within 5 minutes, and it's not going to go live for 20 to an hour or whatever. And then ease of use, we talked about this, like no one on our sales team contributes. Well, very few people. It's very hard. More people would contribute if this was easier. Mm. And it seems like you brought up maybe there's what are some of the other challenges we've talked about that our current system doesn't meet this need?
Well, the speed is a big one, definitely. Beyond that, though, we actually have some mechanisms potentially in place for code quality. Now, there are actually a couple of issues with that. One of them is, and this is what affects the time to deployment, one of the factors that affects that is if we're checking for code quality when someone's edited content, if all they've done is change a paragraph in a markdown file, and yet we're going through and checking all of the JavaScript and all of the Ruby and, keys for this or that or whatever, that's slowing the process down substantially. And that's something that one way or another, I'd like to dry that up. Let's stop repeating ourselves as much as we can with that. Another issue, though, is that even with reviews, If we don't enforce that, so this is one of those situations where we have a problem either way. So if we stop people from getting content in by requiring tests as part of the pipeline, then you can have people who maybe don't know how to fix those issues have their code rejected, have pipelines fail. However, if we turn them off, then what happens is somebody, and currently that somebody tends to be me, will end up finding a lot of links where maybe they don't actually meet our formatting guidelines. We may have absolute links that really should be root relative links, or some things that maybe are just not formatted according to our conventions. And that's something that eventually we could work toward, whether it's in the web IDE or otherwise, being able to do some sort of linting to help with that before it hits the pipelines. I'm a little scatterbrained with some of that, but there you go. I think if we want to keep things as easy as possible to encourage especially non-technical users to make contributions, then they need to not be too hung up on the technical details, whether that's client-side linting or some sort of code quality analysis in the pipeline. Things need to be kept high quality in some way, but we need to try to do that with as little friction as possible.
Yeah, like what is this? This is like maintaining quality with as little friction as possible. And so this is like the example of it. Because yeah, I think this one is, technical knowledge is a barrier to contributing. So here I think, we can have, we can have better training. Only helps a little. You can one-to-one coach people, and we do that today, right? Like we have training and we coach people, but the reality is, I mean, honestly, sometimes I want to propose a change or make a change, and I just don't do it because the MRs are so heavyweight. And I probably make like, I don't know, probably you and I are the power users. Like we make like tons of MRs every day.
Well, and somebody said something the other day. There was some issue, and I don't recall what it was, but it was something in the Is This Known channel on Slack. And somebody says, oh, yeah, I saw that. You should open an issue or open an MR. And it's like, wait a minute, you saw it, but you didn't open an issue or an MR?
Right.
So, and I think it's because there's some friction there. It could be easier. And I think if it were, hopefully we could get more contributions, and we definitely have some room to iterate there.
Yeah, so this is like, the problem is like you need something to go live quickly. It doesn't because the pipeline has to run. There's a possible fix there. This is like, it's not easy for technical users to contribute, or even for technical users that want to contribute quickly and easily. I don't know, like a possible fix is like front end, the handbook with a WYSI wig. Don't know if I spelled that all right. Editor.
Should be a Y. What you see is what you get.
Is what you get.
There you go.
Yeah, so that might be like, even for me, like if I didn't have to go through a whole thing, if I just had a WYSIWYG and I could just like edit stuff and hit go, and it did everything, it abstracted that change from me, might help.
Absolutely.
This one, I don't know what the fix is here. Like you said, maybe it's client side, something that happens client side. This one is tough. It's almost like a trade-off.
Sure.
It's like, it's a choice you need to make between, because I know what you're talking about. Like, what was the absolute versus relative links is a good example here. But
sure. So the issue with that is, of course, that if you're hard coding the links, then they always point to the production site. But if you're trying to actually test something in staging, you don't want your links to go to a different
right. You're going to
website, a different instance.
You're trying to test your flow, and then all of a sudden you're out of the production site and you're no longer in the,
Exactly.
the review app or whatnot.
So, and I don't expect everybody to, intuitively get that. Not everybody is running a local instance or working on staging instances. But that's something where if we were able to provide some guidance, especially if we were able to provide guidance at editing time, that might help a lot to develop good habits. And then hopefully just fewer things like that would get through. I feel like there are some things maybe we have to kind of allow them to get through, but maybe we can encourage them to be fixed before they get through, if you know what I mean. So like we don't necessarily want to hold up a site deployment over one bad link. But at the same
that's another
time,
one, like 404 or dead links, right? This could be oversized images, right? Like not optimized.
Well, and that's another issue. We have, as part of our build process, we're copying
Optimizing all the images every time.
15,000 artifacts. So we need to get to the point where we're not doing that. That's a big chunk of our build time there. And then, this situation here is a fairly optimal or a fairly simple version of what happens, because when we turn on merge trains, that's something that's continuing to be iterated on as well. But that actually pushed our build times up to 3 hours.
Right.
For simple changes. So obviously, somebody in marketing who's just trying to get some information out to update one of their pages or something, they shouldn't have to wait 3 hours to do that.
But that was due to a bug that they fixed.
Was it?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the full output on that. If I understood it correctly, what happened was merge trains essentially just weren't working the way they were supposed to.
Okay.
And if I understand it, essentially what should happen is, like, you have this set of trains, right? This cars in the train.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is, the pipeline is kicked off. One way to do it is to make this one wait until this one's finished before it kicks off. And then you could get like really, really long 3 hour times. What's supposed to happen is this one is supposed to optimistically say, if this one in front of me passes, what would that look like? And just start running its pipeline right away in parallel. Similarly, like the next one in line is supposed to treat it like this one passed. The only time you need to rerun pipelines is if you have a failure, right? But if everything passes, it should happen pretty darn fast because they're all running in parallel. You could have a problem where the number of concurrent runners you have processing all of that queue could be too small. So if you have like 20 changes lined up and you only have 5 runners processing the queue, then you could be waiting longer. But all that's to say is, I think that was a bug, and I think they fixed it, and I think that there's some technical optimizations there. Mm-hmm. But I think that's both a good example of something that we did and we felt. I think it's a good example of dog fooding. Like, we did something, we felt the pain of it, and it drove a change.
We did. I think that's also, interestingly enough, another example of how we are not necessarily dog fooding the right food for the right dog. So,
right, like, yeah, like that's kind of, so maybe this, I don't know how I would describe this, but like, we're using a tool for a use case that we don't go to market with. So that's one of the problems, or like it causes, maybe this is a cause of a problem. I don't know if it is a problem in and of itself, but the idea is we have GitLab pages, mm-hmm. and the use cases that we go to market for GitLab pages are, you can have like a a marketing style website for your project, which you use it for a marketing site. You can use it to host artifacts that are web-based artifacts. You can spin them up and view those right away. Those are kind of the use cases for GitLab Pages. But we are using it as like this content management system. And we don't go to market with GitLab Pages as a content management system. Like there's no
as a large scale, high volume content management system.
Yeah, like there's no GitLab category for that. Like here, like there's a category for pages, but that pages is not what we're doing, right? Pages is only a component of the solution. The solution we're doing is we're using pages plus merge requests, and maybe some other bits, basically to have like a large scale content management system. So we don't have CMS in this chart.
So I guess a big question that leads to then is that something that should be something we go to market with? Is there sufficient market for that for us to make that the solution that we drive? Or do we consider a different, do we adapt how we do things in a more realistic way for our goals if we don't have customers wanting to do things the way we're doing them? For this particular project, that is. I'm thinking mainly of the handbook here.
So I don't know that we would attack this, although we've attacked some pretty huge markets. There's a web content management system market, like Gartner has an MQ for it. This was like, all these ones, like Adobe, and some others. In fact, I could probably link something like that. So there's a market for this type of tool, but does it make sense for us to go into that market? I don't know. But just the general thing is that we're using our product for something that we don't go to market with. Therefore, the problems that we're experiencing, nobody's responsible for optimizing them.
Right. And so if the notion of dog fooding is really that we're using our product and feeling the pain so that we can make improvements that will benefit our customers, but we don't have any customers who are doing what we're doing, do we continue doing what we're doing as we're doing it, or how do we iterate on that process?
Yeah, so I think some of these challenges that emerge in regards to we're dog fooding. We're clearly dog fooding because we're clearly using our own tool, but we're not dog fooding because we're using our tool for something that our customers don't do.
Dog fooding sort of implies the public product, right? Like we're eating the dog food that we make for the public, but in a sense, we're making parts of this for the public, but not all.
Right. In theory, this would be to our detriment, in the sense that if we optimize, so the idea behind dog fooding is if we optimize for ourselves, it would be beneficial to our customers. That's the implicit assumption. But because we're using the tools in a way that our customers don't use the tools, we could put an optimization in that's not beneficial to our customer base. So anyway, that's a thought I have there.
That's a good point.
I think this was kind of covered in the quality. We're probably popping up on time here. Is there anything else that kind of comes to mind that we've talked about in terms of like, this is a challenge, or this is a shortfall, problem, pain point?
Well, there is one thing regarding 404's dead links and basically testing external links in general. We can test our internal links theoretically as often as we want, and we're never going to flag ourselves for abuse. But that is actually something we cannot do and must not do with every build and deployment. We can't simply say every time we deploy the website or every time we build the website, we're going to go test every external link on there, or we're going to find ourselves on some blacklists pretty quickly. So we have to be very conscientious about how we do that, and do that in a considerate way, a way that is very considerate to external servers.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay. Well, cool. Well, I thought this was like a very interesting conversation. I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm probably just a Handbook fan. So I have, I think the Handbook is just a beautiful thing because it allows us to scale to this like huge remote company, and if we can nail it, I think it's a critical component of us scaling to the next level. I'll say that. That's why I'm interested in it.
Absolutely. And I think it helps to have some people who are passionate about it, because that's what really drives the quality and I think enables that sort of scaling. We're definitely having some growing pains with it, and hopefully those growing pains will lead to some positive improvements.
So I don't know what the next step is. I don't know if you and I have like a next step from this conversation, but at a minimum, we've documented some of the thoughts so that if it comes up again, these live somewhere.
Sure. Well, I would definitely recommend keeping up to date with the Handbook and Handbook updates channels if you want to just see what sort of things are in fact merged in. And then we also have the, let's see, what was it? What are we calling the Handbook team now? The static site editor team. I think that's what we're calling it.
Cool, man.
Well, I can't guarantee that's what we'll be calling it next month. I don't know. We may iterate on that as well. So we iterate on everything, right?
You got to iterate. That's right. All right. Well, Brad, I really appreciate the conversation, and we'll catch up more in Slack.
Thanks a lot for your time, William. Appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Cheers.